This is Rainbow Six Siege, and this is Rainbow Six Siege in Minecraft. For the past 4 months, I've been working to create a one-to-one recreation of one of my favorite games inside of Minecraft. From the maps, to the gadgets, to the guns, all in vanilla Minecraft. Well, there's actually one mod, more on that later. This project will have it all, because this is only part 1. And in part 2, using your feedback and suggestions, I plan to turn this all up to 11 with even more features. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There is one obvious place to start, the map. For this part, I decided to only make one map, choosing one of my personal favourites, Oregon. I started out by using Terralith to make a new world and found a savanna biome. Once I found a spot that looked close enough to Oregon's surroundings, I picked a flat area and used Axiom to draw in the front road using placeholder blocks. I then found some of Ubisoft's map blueprints online and eyeballed them to build up the outer walls and buildings. And by this point, even the placeholder building was looking good. But don't worry, it's not going to look like a bouncy castle for much longer. Now, Oregon is divided into 3 sections: the front building, the back building, and the side building. The first building I'd be building is the front one, and it's actually this whitish grey wood colour, and luckily for me, Minecraft just added a whitish grey wood, except I built this months ago, when I didn't know there was going to be a whitish grey wood. But that's okay, I don't really like the way it looks anyway. So I came up with this pretty clean gradient from sandstone to birch wood and painted it onto the building. The back red building is nothing fancy, I just used mangrove planks and stripped mangrove logs for the texture. This was also around the time where I decided to take out the corners of the buildings and replace them with fences. I think it helps with the rickety, decrepit feel of the building. And speaking of, I also covered the buildings with signs, which look a bit like planks of wood. The third building is actually quite different from the other two. It's made out of yellow and grey metal, I think, but after some experimenting I found a combination that works well. Acacia logs and stripped bamboo. I painted them onto the building, added some other small details around the sides and back, including this water tank, before finishing what is, in my opinion, the best looking area of the build. The exterior of the build anyway. I've got a favourite interior part too, which we've still got to do. But first, I did a bit of work on the construction site out back. Earlier in the outlining process, I'd started digging it out but never actually finished it. So, I finished digging it out, built up this scaffolding roof thing, I'm not sure what to call it, lightly terraformed the ground, added in the start of a shipping container that will eventually go here, and then finally moved on to the interior. Now, unfortunately for me, there was a pretty big problem with how I designed the exterior that was going to be a pain to fix on the interior, and this problem hit me in the face pretty much right away. See, Minecraft's walls are really thick, way thicker than Siege's walls, and this wouldn't have been a problem if I'd accounted for that when building the outside. But I hadn't. Well, not really. I actually did know this, but I chose to ignore it because I thought I had a trick up my sleeve. And well, I do. About 2 years ago now, Minecraft added block display entities. If you're at all interested in technical or creative side of Minecraft, I'm sure they need no introduction. But if you're not, all you need to know is that they are very customizable entities with no hitbox that can take on the look of any block or item in the game, which was perfect for me. I could get around my thick walls problem by building the outside out of real blocks, and then layering the inside with block displays. Except, I did this in a way that would cause more problems than it solved. But at this point, I was oblivious to the new issue that would soon arise. So I started working on the main floor. I didn't do too much planning for the interior, I just booted up the game and walked around, copying the rooms as best as I could. And I think I did a pretty good job at it, all things considered. The first floor ended up being probably my second favourite floor, behind the basement that we'll get to soon enough. But I moved upstairs first, to design the bedrooms, and whatever this area is, attic, the hallway thing. But once I mostly finished things up there, I headed down to the basement. But by now, I was pretty sick and tired of building up the false walls I mentioned. Speaking of, now's probably a good time to mention the issue I talked about. See, in order to get the display entities flush with the wall, you have to push them inside of a block, and this causes them to go black because of a lighting issue. I can fix this if I translate the block outside But because I hadn't lit up the inside yet, I had night vision on, which means I actually couldn't see the blocks turning black. And once I actually realized the problem, it was almost too late. So I had two options: either redo all of the walls in order to light them correctly, or leave it and just give the player night vision instead. And at the time, I did not want to have to go through all of that and redo all of the walls. So, for the time being, I regretfully opted to just give the player night vision. And that brings us back to where we are now, working on the basement, loathing the fake walls. So because of that, and the fact I have the luxury of no outer walls holding me back down there, the basement has no false walls. And it just so happens to be my favorite floor of the build. After finishing the basement, I went outside, added grass, built up the caravans, cars, and bobcat. Though I'm not really happy with how the cars came together. I think the other vehicles look great, but the cars just look, I don't know, bland. But that about does it for the build. It's not quite finished yet, I know, but it will be, don't worry. But I love what we've done so far. There were a few other Oregon maps out there that I could have just downloaded and used, but they were outdated, and in my opinion, I think I've done it better. But we're not done yet. I've still got to make this game functional, and of course, test it out at the end. So here is a long list of features I've currently done that we'll be going through, versus some that are planned but I just haven't done yet. Starting with the camera system. While I was building the map, I took the time to create this camera model using display entities of a quartz slab and a cannonball custom head. I put them around the map in their positions and started figuring out how I was going to code them. Everyone else I'd seen make cameras used players riding armor stands as the camera. So how hard could it be? I made one armor stand that the player would ride, and then had the armor stand teleport to various locations around the map. And that was where I had made a mistake. If there was only one armor stand, how could more than one player be on the cameras at the same time? The answer? They couldn't. So I reworked the system to include a separate armor stand for each player, and have them teleport to the primary armor stands at each camera location. Simple enough. With the basics of data packing learnt, I moved on to something a bit more challenging: the utility items, or gadgets. Thankfully, in 1.21.2, they added a new way to make custom, consumable items, changing it from the older eating item component. So, using this and some custom heads I found online, I made 4 different utility items: the grenade, the flash grenade, the impact grenade, and the proximity alarm. And I know what you're saying, where's the C4, where's the reach charge? Hush little one, in due time. For now, the attackers can use impact grenades, and defenders can use normal grenades. In hindsight, the logic for these are rather simple, but for what was my first week learning data packs, these were a headache to get right. And many hours was spent on debugging these things. I literally have it written in my notes that I, quote, wanted to pull my hair out while I was making the impact grenades. So there's that. Either way, the way these things work is when one is used, it gives the player an advancement that runs a function spawning an item display riding a snowball. The snowball has custom velocity controlled by this number, and when it almost hits a block, it either follows through hitting the block, causing an explosion or aligning the alarm, or it quickly stores its motion, reverses it, halves it, and sometimes bounces back the other way, in the case of the grenades, flash grenades, and drone item that we'll get to soon. Which is something worth mentioning, it sometimes bounces back. I'm not sure why it's so inaccurate, but the only way I know how to fix it is to make the item displays move on their own using some 4th dimensional math and logic, which I am not doing right now. But you know what I am doing right now? Fixing my past mistakes. While I was data packing, I went back through the map and fixed all of the false walls in order to add this moody lighting throughout the whole map. And boy was it worth it. The basement is actually lit like a horror game. If you have shaders anyway. Otherwise it just looks lame as hell. Alright, drones. The player shrinks down and teleports to a silverfish spawned when they threw the drone item in the earlier section. The silverfish then wakes up and follows the player wherever they go, acting as the hitbox. Other players can kill the silverfish, destroying the drone, while the player stays alive, now without a drone. The drones were actually created using a lot of the same logic as the cameras, the dropping of items to enter, exit, and change the drones, as well as the husks taking the player's last position. Oh, I never mentioned that, silly me. When the player enters the drones or cameras, I needed to keep their location but also make it so they could die. So I chose to summon a non-moving husk with their player head at their last position. Now by this point the days started to blur, and my hard drive started to overflow. There was also a giant gun-shaped elephant in the room that I would like to address. So I'm going to end our suffering and bless us both with a lightning round of features. These are the soft walls. Love these things. You throw an impact, they explode. Look, it's different each time. Hatches are the same, minus the coolness. Lame. Barricades, they exist. I hate them. Hit once, hit twice, hit thrice, hit 4 times and they're down. 6 for the double whack. Quick building break. This is the GUI. It's accessed by the Game Master, who is the first person who joins the world. They can change the game settings, or start the game, or transfer the Game Master to someone else. The game settings include plant time, defuse time, prep time, action time, round number, number of rounds between swapping roles, and friendly fire. Speaking of planting and defusing, these are the bomb and diffuser models. I've only made the bomb objective so far, but that's okay because no one plays the other two anyway. Players can vote for their preferred site during their prep time using their own GUI. Okay, I think that's it. There was probably a lot more that I could tell you about the process of making this, but to be honest, I don't remember most of it. I can say that at one point I had over 50 hours of coding footage alone, but that was before I had to delete most of it, and my Modrinth profiles say that I have over 800 hours played. But that does count for the times I've had the game open while my computer was asleep. I think it's safe to say that something like 200 hours was spent on data packing alone. And that segues me into finding out possibly the most demotivating thing I could find out about this project. Alright, that's a bit overdramatic. I was on the wrong version. That's it, that's the big reveal. Do you remember earlier when I said that the utility items had recently changed from the old food component to the new consumable component? Yeah, well, I'd have to go back to using that, in all of its barbarian glory. And all because my guns aren't up to date. Yeah, that's right. The one mod I've been alluding to is Vic's Point Blank. Did you really think I was going to make and model my own guns? For my first video? I don't think so. So I backported the datapack and items to 1.21.1. But other than the items, there weren't really any issues that I could find, so I'd consider this problem rather minor. I then added some guns to the spawn areas that the players could pick, did some multiplayer debugging using Carpet Mod's fake players, and finally, I think my baby bird is ready to leave the nest. But before we see if she can fly, I'll give you the rundown of how a typical game would play out. You, being the popular devil you are, invite up to 9 of your friends to this new Minecraft map you found. Each of you get a compass. But you, the special founder of this map, is assigned the role of Game Master. You get to control the game's settings and have control over when the game starts and stops. The world is in your hands. Using their compasses, everyone can choose their team with up to 5 people being allowed on each side. If you, in your eagerness to get into the action, accidentally start before everyone has selected their team, don't worry, the teams will be randomized. In each team's spawn area, they can select their primary and secondary weapon of their choice. Up to 2 gadgets, not including the attacker's diffuser, they can choose where they want to spawn, and using their compass, they can ready up to skip the timer on the right hand side. Huh, I wonder what's gonna go in this room. Once everyone has readied up and chosen their bomb site and spawn location, the prep phase starts. There's not much for defenders to do yet during the prep phase, as there currently isn't any reinforcing or mid-map barricade placements, but they can make rotates, I guess. For attackers, they're forced onto their drones for reconnaissance. If and when they find the site, it's marked for everyone in the game, and then the round plays out how you'd expect it to. The attackers attack, and the defenders defend. And when one of the teams win, they'll do it all again. And that about does it. I consider this game in a very early beta stage, and I'm sure there are a ton of bugs, although I've tried to weed out as many as I can. But enough clowning around, let's put her to the test. So first things first, I'm gonna need to find someone to try it out with. Okay, never mind, I guess. Well, instead of that, you can check it out for yourself in the link in the description. And if this video gets an arbitrary number of likes, I might make a part 2 with operators, if you're lucky. Goodbye.